Hi, it's Wednesday afternoon, and it's the 2nd of June 2021. Uh, we were looking at the story of Elijah. Now, that's quite spread over Kings and Second Kings, and I want to sort of move on a bit here today on the story. I'll recap, give you like a soundbite, but I suggest you look at it yourself, from Kings 19 right through to the end of Kings, First Kings. Um, so what happened was that Elijah was in the cave. The Lord spoke to him. Elijah was a bit depressed. That's where we left the story last week. And of course, the Lord says, I have a job for you to do. Carry on here. And he was given instructions to anoint a prophet that was going to come after him, Elisha, to go and do that. And also to anoint, I believe, two other people that had to do a job. And that job was to later on the line was to Ahab and Jezebel were going, and the God was going to deal with them, judge them very severely. So we'll pick up a story. I'll soundbite this, but what happened later on in Kings 21? You've got Naboth and Ahab in the vineyard. Now, what happened was that Ahab, greedy man, selfish man, desired to purchase Naboth's vineyard. Of course, Naboth says, look, it's been my ancestors for years and years. I ain't budging, I ain't selling. And of course, Ahab went back, a bit like sucking his thumb, and depressed and fed up, poor boy, spoiled boy. And of course, Jezebel seen this, and Jezebel says, what's the problem? And he says, I want that vineyard. He wouldn't sell it to me. Well, she says, don't worry, I'll get to the vineyard. And of course, she done a terrible thing. She brought false witnesses against Naboth, the things they accused her to do. And poor Naboth was put to death, and Ahab grabbed the vineyard. But the thing is, guess who came and talked to him? Elijah. Elijah says to Naboth, how are you doing that there? Your blood's going to be spilt the same way as Naboth's. Otherwise, you're going to die. This is judgment upon you. Of course, he went into tantrum and a bit depressed and fed up, of course. And of course, what happened was, we'll see what happened. The next couple of chapters talks about Naboth having battles and not doing them right, etc., etc. And you hear the mention of other prophets. Like Micah was one of them. Micah was mentioned as a prophet, and of course Ahab done the dog on him, and terrible what happened. And of course it worked on until a battle took place, and this was it. And an arrow Ahab was in the battle, believe it or not, big army. And what happened was an arrow from the enemy went in through the armour and gave him a very severe wound, and he bled to death on the chariot. And the strange thing was that his chariot was washed in the pool where Naboth, the blood was spilt. So the prophecy of Elijah came true. No wonder these bad guys hated the prophets. And these are the real thing here, that judgment came upon him for that, and he died, of course. What happened was that his son, Ezra, came in his place, and he was a bad boy. He inherited Ahab's throne, and of course he fell through a lattice roof and was badly crippled. And what happened? I'll read a wee bit out of get into the word here, 2 Kings chapter 1 here. After the death of Ahab, Moab rebelled against Israel, and Asa had fallen through the lattice of a window of his upper room in Samaria and was injured. And he sent messengers to instruct him, go to inquire Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. That means the god of flies. This guy was bad too, and he's wondering, could you ask this god, can I recover from this injury? Of course, this was demonic, of course. But it says, verse 3, the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, go and meet the messengers of the king of Samaria and ask him, Is it because there's no God in Israel that you're going to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore, this is what the Lord says: you will not get up from your sickbed, and you will certainly die. And Elijah left. And they replied, this carried the message, a man came to meet us and said, go back to the king who sent you and declare to him that this is what the Lord said. It is because there is no God in Israel that you're sending these men to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. Therefore you will not get up from your sickbed, and you will certainly die. Okay, verse 7, the king asked him, what sort of man came up to meet you? And they spoke these words. They replied, a hairy man with a leather belt around his waist. And he said, it's Elijah the Tishbite. So here was Elijah bringing a judgment on Ahab's son that was going to happen to him. And sure enough, he sent another couple of messengers, 50 men, went up, and they got burnt to death, I believe. I sent up the last lot, and he was a bit more humble to Elijah. He says, please don't, I don't want to die. It says, tell me the situation, oh man of God, you know. So Elijah responded, if I am the man of God, may fire come down from heaven to consume you. It goes on to say this here. And the king sent a third captain, went up and fell on his knees in front of Elijah, begged him, man of God, please not let my life for the life of these 50 men. A ready fire had come down from heaven and consumed the first two captains of the 50 of the 50s, but this time let my life be precious in your sight. So he pronounced a judgment on him, and of course Ezra died, you know, pretty rough, you know. So we're going to look now, remember there's another judgment to come, Jezebel. But we're going to look here now what happened to Elijah. And this is incredible. There's only two men in the Bible that didn't die. One was in the Old Testament, and this other one's Elijah. You know, and it says, the time had come for the Lord to take up Elijah into heaven in a whirlwind. And Elisha and Elijah were traveling to Gilead. And he says, stay here, I'm sending you on to Bethel. But Elisha replied, no, as the Lord lives, as your life goes, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethel. It goes on to say that Elijah came to the river and he smote the waters, and the waters moved, and it split, and he walked over on dry land. Now you remember with Elisha and Elijah, there was another group of prophets that followed him all the time, you know, and this was some sight to see. And they crossed over, and Elijah said to Elisha, tell me what I can do for you before I am taken from you. So Elijah knew what was going to happen to him. So Elisha answered, said, please let me inherit 2 shares of your spirit. And Elijah said, if you ask for something difficult, if you see me being taken from you, you will have it. But if not, you won't. And they continued talking, and a chariot of fire with horses of fire suddenly appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. And Elisha watched, and he kept crying out, my father, the chariots and the horsemen of Israel. Then he never saw Elijah again, and he took hold of his clothes and tore them in two. And Elisha picked up the mantle that had fallen from Elijah from his back and stood on the banks of the Jordan. Now, that must have been an incredible sight. I used to think that Elijah went up to heaven on the fiery chariot, but he didn't. The fiery chariot separated them, and Elijah went up in a whirlwind. That must have been an incredible sight that Elisha witnessed, and the mantle fell, and he took the mantle. It's powerful altogether, you know, what happened there. So Elijah had gone up to heaven, and Elisha was left then. Just to finish the story here, the prophecy about Jezebel. What happened was the other guys took over, and they were driving along, and they came to where Jezebel was, and it was incredible what happened. Jezebel sort of shouted out the window at them, and the guy was in the chariots turned around and says, "Throw her out of the window." It was her maid servants, and they threw her out. They didn't like Jezebel, and sure enough, she fell on the ground, and they went over her body, and the horses sort of trampled her, and the horses, and they went down and had a bite to eat, more or less, and they thought as they're having a bite to eat, they said, "We better go out and look." She was a princess, you know, so we better bury her. They went out, and all was left was her palms of her hands, you know, and a bit of her body, and it was put in a dung heap. Incredible. Read it there for you. God always judges. The prophets weren't liked, but this was a powerful man, Elijah. May the Lord bless you. Some of that you'll have to read yourself and pick it up, but it's a wonderful story. Elijah went to heaven and he didn't die. Bye.